Yes. They told me you were fools, and that I was not to listen to your fine words nor trust your charity. You promised me my life, but you lied. You think that life is nothing but not being stone dead. It is not the bread and water I fear. I can live on bread. When have I asked for more? It is no hardship to drink water if the water be clean. Bread has no sorrow for me, and water no affliction, but to shut me from the light of the sky and the sight of the fields and flowers, to chain my feet so I may never again ride with the soldiers, nor climb the hills, to make me breathe foul, damp darkness, and keep me from everything that brings me back into the love of God, when your wickedness and your foolishness tempt me to hate him. All this is worse than the furnace in the Bible that was heated 7 times. I could do without my war horse. I could drag about in a skirt. I could let the banners and the trumpets and the knights and soldiers pass me and leave me behind as they leave other women. If only I could still hear the wind in the trees, the larks on the sunshine, the young lambs crying through the healthy frost, and the blessed, blessed church bells that bring my angel voices floating to me on the wind. But without these things I cannot live. And by your wanting to take them from me or any human creature, I know that your counsel is of the devil, and that mine is of God. I chose this monologue because it had a lot of George Bernard Shaw, who wrote Saint Joan. He uses a very specific style of language, so a lot of it's kind of imagery. So there's always like quite a lot of interesting words in there, which for an actor is always quite a good thing to have if you can play with a lot of words. So the monologue comes from a play called Saint Joan, written by George Bernard Shaw sort of in the 1930s, and it was basically the time where Joan of Arc was becoming a saint, like they were recognising her as a legitimate saint, because of all the things that she did in France in sort of the 1620s, I think. She basically went and won the French versus English war on her own, basically. And she was never really recognised for the achievements that she did. So George Bernard Shaw said, this needs to be rectified, and he wrote a play. And she was then recognised as a saint after that, so... So I connected with the character because there was a sort of... There was a huge sense of standing for what you believe in and saying, okay, this was wrong. You promised me this. You didn't deliver. So how does that make me in the wrong? I went out and I won a war for you. How does that make me in the wrong? I'm being persecuted for this. It's that thing of, I know what I did was right and I'm going to stand by that. And that was something I really connected to, particularly sort of in this age of feminism and, all these issues that are being brought up that people are now starting to take seriously. So I prepared for it by doing the basics, researching the play, researching the playwright, researching the story, and then I went a little bit deeper into it and started looking at the themes of the play and how they connected to the monologue on its own, taking it out of context rather. Do those themes still work? Then looking into the emotional journey of the character. This is at the end of the play, so this is when she's just about to be executed. She's just about to be burned at the stake. And really trying to figure out that moment of rather than living at the top of a tower in a jail cell, she'd rather be burnt to death, and trying to find something in my life that I could kind of, I'd rather have this bad thing than this other bad thing that maybe doesn't seem so bad to other people, so sort of trying to reinforce the strength of the character through finding those moments. Actually learning the monologue didn't take that long. It probably only took me a couple of days to get the lines right. But there's still, like with anything, there's always one or two things that at the beginning she says, I was not to listen to your fine words nor trust your charity, but in my head I was always swapping trust and listen. So there's always something that you kind of don't quite latch onto, but yeah, probably only 2 days it took me to actually learn it, and that was just through trying to understand what it was she was trying to say. Probably my favourite line is probably the end, when she sort of says, she says, "But without these things I cannot live, and through your wanting to take them from me, or any human creature, I know that your counsel is of the devil and mine is of God." And it's sort of the last thing she says in the play as well. It's the last dig at the council and the nobles and the priests that are all persecuting her for her actions, and it just feels like quite a strong ending to it. Yeah, that's probably my favourite line. I don't concentrate so much on the actual audience, like sort of going to see the play. I concentrate more on the people that are around me, so the priests, the council, the nobles, the actual persecutors of Joan, and that's sort of what I'm visualising. But I guess like it's a classical play, so anyone who's into Shakespeare, anyone who's into Ibsen or Chekhov, will be into things like Bernard Shaw. So yeah, probably, and people who are into history as well tend. I sort of go through waves. So I mean, generally, I think David Thewlis is probably my favourite actor. But people like Tilda Swinton and Cate Blanchett, who can kind of do anything. And then you've got like obviously Meryl Streep and Emma Thompson are just like classics, and Dame Judi Dench and Glenda Jackson, who played King Lear. She just decided she was going to play King Lear, and it was like, yeah, go for it. And she did really well. I wasn't expecting her to do well, but she did well. But yeah, I mean, like anyone who can kind of be completely different to the way they are, to be that versatile and that flexible and body and voice is sort of an inspiration to me. I don't know. I don't think it was so much about performing. I think I just remember reading stories as a kid and just wanting to understand why these people were making those choices, because they were not the choices I would make. You know, so if you've got sort of a particularly villainous character who decides, this person's in my way, so I'm just going to kill them. Well, I wouldn't make that choice, you know, I would ask them to get out of my way. You know, it's like, so actually just trying to get in and understand those things. And I think I just found that through acting and through performing in plays, I found it easier because you were connecting a little bit more to dialogue, so you then had to be that person and say, okay, well, what if? You know, you had to play the big game of what if. Yeah, that's what made me want to do it.